So our lesson for today derived from the lessons and the experiences that I had while doing this past retreat in Thailand. The way that I've taught mindfulness and meditation in this class formally is the way that it's usually taught, which is you are meditating with the meditation object, whether it's the breath or a visualized object or just resting in presence. And the idea is that you would be using intention to bring the mind back or to keep the mind in the present moment. So anytime the mind wanders, let's say you're feeling the breath, you feel it for one moment, you feel it for the next, you feel it for the next, observe it for the next, and then before you know it, the mind is off thinking about ice cream or something that happened last week or something that's going to happen. And then when you recognize that, you have the intention of drawing it back to the present moment or back to the body. In this class, we've taken a unique approach in the sense that there's not a specific method that is practiced here. Everyone is welcome to practice whatever technique it is that they want to practice. So some of us observe the breath. Some of us don't do anything, just resting in awareness. Others use this time to do loving kindness or compassion practice. The door is open, so you can practice whatever you like. And of course, some of us practice Dhammakaya meditation in here, which is a meditation technique that uses an object visualized inside of the body. You're free to practice as you wish, whatever is easiest for you. But the point I want to really drive home today is to shift from being in that doer seat of having to bring the mind back every single time and being in a more passive and receptive place in the meditation, really not doing anything. This is the real essence that can make meditation so transformative. Finally getting out of the way. I mean, completely. So usually when we meditate, there's still a sense of volition there. There's still a sense of intention. You're intending to always come back to the present moment. You're intending to always come back to the meditation object. This is how it's taught. This is how it's been done for thousands of years. Let's give ourselves permission today to do absolutely nothing. I mean, nothing. So even the slight intention to bring back the meditation object, today, even let that go. All sense of control, all sense of doing, all sense of directing, let it go. Just for today. Just try it and see what happens. Usually we're so accustomed in meditation to doing, to controlling the mind, to taming the mind. These are all the words and terms that we've been so familiar with over the years. Tame the mind, control the mind, train the mind, subdue the mind. So there are many ways to cut a tree. There are many ways to reach the top of a mountain, to reach the summit. And what works for one person may not work for another. Traditionally, and for most of my training, I was always taught to really train the mind and tame the mind and exercise quite a bit of control and effort. And that changed after many years. I saw that for me, that was just too much doing. It was too coarse. When I finally learned to let go and just let the mind rest in a natural state, to let the mind completely be as it is, to let the breath be as it is, to let the body be as it is. There was a freedom that began to dawn after my practice moved in that direction. So one of the questions we ask often, or that we may ask, is how do we achieve, or how do we experience stillness? All the meditation techniques, or all the meditations that use objects like the breath, a visual object, or a mantra, these are all aimed at stillness, and they eventually lead to refined states of consciousness and meditation. So the common question is, I've been doing this meditation for a long time. I haven't experienced stillness. What's going on? Been doing this meditation for 6 months. Still haven't experienced stillness. What's going on? So the overlooked thing is this: all that doing, all that wanting, all that directing, and all that controlling that we exercise and have exercised in meditation is the very thing that is keeping the mind in movement. The wanting, the expectation, the directing, that itself is what creates turbulence in the waters of the mind. It's not just whether there's a lot of content in the mind. It's actually whether that volitional sphere, or that volitional aspect of our mind, is active or not. If it's passive and it's in a passive state, you're resting there free from want. You're resting there in a kind of openness, and there's so much ease. But if that volition center is activated, the doer is activated. And if the doer is activated, there's going to be the sense of controlling, there's going to be the sense of modification. You're going to try to adjust and adapt, and there's a place for all that. But give meditation a shot where you totally release control and you just surrender to things exactly as they are. The breath exactly as it is. If you have a lot of thoughts, leave it exactly as it is. If you have no thoughts, leave it exactly as it is. If the breath is short, leave it exactly as it is. If the breath is deep, leave it exactly as it is. If you feel like crap, let that be exactly as it is. If you feel bliss, let that be exactly as it is. Here we're learning very directly to have a kind of non-resistance, to have a total non-resistance to our experience exactly as it is, not as we'd like it to be, but exactly as it is. So there's immense freedom in being able to meet life without resistance. And that starts with our mind, and with what's happening in the body, and what's happening in our perception, and at the level of thought and feeling. So the way that I've taught all of you for so long to control the mind, to direct the mind, to subdue the mind, it works, but it's more difficult, and the effects tend not to last very long. Maybe you can have 5 minutes of that stillness in meditation, but because it's something that you're holding in place, and something that is being contrived, essentially, it's not very prolonged, and it's not able to be prolonged unless you're in retreat type conditions. But if you're able to really surrender an entire vaster, or larger, it seems, dimension of mind and experience begins to bleed through. And the stillness from that is a stillness that is not from effort. It's not from doing. It's not from controlling. And it has a natural purity and stillness all of its own. So the way that we'll access that today is, maybe for the first time in a long time, maybe for the first time ever, you're going to give yourself permission to not do anything at all. Give yourself permission not to think about anything in particular. Give yourself permission not to plan anything in particular. Give yourself permission to just completely be just as you are. So I say the words, don't do anything. There's nothing that you need to do. And that may register in your mind as incomprehensible. That does not even make sense. It's not supposed to make sense necessarily. It's the thinking mind, the conceptual mind that tries to understand this. We're working with a different aspect of consciousness here, a more intuitive aspect. So if you can today, just let go, give it all up, and just let yourself rest in a total release. There's a marker that can indicate that, and that is physical relaxation. So when we start the meditation, I'll guide for the first 5 minutes, and then we'll just rest in silence for the rest of the class. Relax all the muscles in your stomach. So when you relax all the muscles in the stomach, you have this kind of physical openness. It's the indicator of a physical release that has happened. Resting in that release is all that you're doing. So to start with the body, to start with just releasing the muscles in the abdomen, unhinging your jaw, relaxing the muscles in your head and in your face. That's a good place to start. And then just coast and rest in that from moment to moment. You don't need to bring the mind back to the present moment. As crazy as that sounds, you don't actually need to do it. Here's why. If you let the mind just completely be as it is, and you really stop directing things and stop controlling and stop wanting, just let all of that go, you'll find that even if the mind wanders, it just returns naturally to the present moment. Why? Because that's exactly where the mind is and where the body is all the time. It just is not able to experience that because of the cacophony of thought and internal experience that is really overlapping and overlaying our perceptions and the aspect of consciousness that is always in the now. So by dropping everything, by surrendering, by really opening yourself to being, there's an incredible release, freedom, and purity that's always been within you that starts to unfold. So see this session as an adventure instead of something so serious. I've taught in ways that are quite serious. I don't want to do that anymore. I want all of you to really see this as something fun. I know it's early. It's a little early to have fun, but see it as fun, see it as enjoyable. Just see this as an adventure. You don't know what's going to happen the next 30 minutes. You have no idea what's going to happen the next 30 minutes. Have that frame and be open, and maybe you'll have a magical meditation. So we can start with that. Release. Just be. In Thai, we call it sabai, which means like you're laying at the beach and you're just basking in the sun. That's the kind of relaxation that sabai is referring to. And that's really the base of meditation. I'll say a final story. I met a great Tibetan teacher when I was 19. So in 2012, he was giving a lecture in Pasadena, which is on the outskirts of Los Angeles County. And so he gave this talk about presence and awareness and the nature of mind and Buddhism, and it was completely incomprehensible. It just made no sense. And in that tradition, you receive something called a transmission, which is a direct introduction to the state of meditation in the presence of the teacher. And that's supposed to be a very transformative moment for a student. So I had read in some books that, people were in front of the teacher during this kind of transmission, and then boom, they just awakened and experienced a level of enlightenment at that point. So he gives this whole lecture, and then at the end he does his introduction to the nature of mind and the transmission, and felt absolutely nothing. So after the fact, I go up and talk to him, and I say, teacher, did I miss the transmission? I mean, I was here for the whole thing. I mean, nothing happened. And he just laughed. And he said, just keep practicing. And the next time I had time with him, I asked him, how do I awaken? And he said, how do you feel? And I said, I feel present. And then he just nodded and he said, now relax. And I said, that's it? And he said, that's it. Took me 7 years to understand that. 7 years to awaken to what that meant. So don't take 7 years. Just do it now. Just relax. Just let go. Rest and release. The presence is naturally there. When the mind wanders, let it wander. Mindfulness, awareness will return all on its own. So really today, just get out of the way. No directing. Let everything be. That's it. So we can start now.